Hello, my name is Dr. John Turner, the founder and developer of QNRT, otherwise known as Quantum Neuro Reset Therapy. Today we're going to do an introduction of what QNRT is. We have a lot of clients that will call us and also other practitioners and want to know a little bit more about QNRT, what it's based upon, how does it work, and how could it benefit you if you are struggling with a healthcare problem. This is for educational purposes. QNRT is not a replacement for medical treatment and does not claim to cure or heal or treat diseases. Okay? Let's go ahead and get started today, and let's have a better understanding of what quantum neuro reset therapy means. So as we get started, we need to have a better understanding of probably the largest and more in-depth healthcare study that was conducted by insurance companies looking for an aspect: does emotional stress or early childhood experiences that are stressful lead to health problems and illnesses later in life? And you can refer to this study, and I challenge you to take a look at this. It's extremely interesting. You can go to www.cdc.gov. and that's the Center and Disease Control, located here in Atlanta. They have a great website, and you can look up this study called the ACE study, and it's for adverse childhood experiences, and it's going to give you a wealth of information. But one thing for sure that you'll find out from this large healthcare study is that there are some significant findings that relate to later adulthood health problems, as it can be correlated to early childhood emotional experiences. So an ACE event was defined in this study as anything that was somehow a neglect within the family or social situation. This neglect could be literally that that a sibling was born, and that maybe that sibling required a lot of attention due to either a disability or some type of health problem they may have had, and the child that actually developed this adverse childhood experience would be the one that probably would not get as much attention. Neglect and abandonment are pretty clear as far as this could occur in a number of different ways, but it can be subtle as well. The other aspects of these adverse events could be within the family. Divorce can happen in the family, and now there's a separation loss, and that child has a hard time understanding that. One thing we know for sure about child psychology is that a child will accept 100% responsibility for any change within that family dynamic, and that relates to divorce, separation, even death in that family. That child doesn't have the brain capability of understanding it, other than the fact that they are somehow responsible. And these events or childhood development will say this occurs up to the age about 12 to 14. Even addictions within the family, something like alcoholism or some type of drug abuse, can also play a factor in these adverse experiences. Abuse, both on the mental side, emotional side, and physical side, will also play a part of that. In this study, though, one of the things that they were able to determine that the largest hit or the largest stress that a child will experience is the top one, which is neglect and abandonment in the family. If this is to occur, then their health issues or their inabilities to deal with life are going to be greatly reduced based on that one stress that they might have experienced. This study clearly connects emotional events to other health issues, and it basically talks about the significant increase in health problems they've been able to document as an autoimmune issue. One of the largest factors for these early childhood issues will affect immune issues, and these can be anywhere from arthritis to thyroid issues to chemical sensitivities, immune sensitivities. These can all kind of be put into this category. Certain organs are definitely more affected. The liver, the lung, and the heart seem to be more affected in these areas, as well as headaches, of all things, seems to be much more predominant for those people who have experienced more of these adverse childhood experiences. On top of that, not only from a health standpoint, but cognitive and emotional stresses were very apparent among this group. Things like depression, suicide, anxiety, and alcoholism were very prevalent or very prominent in those children later in adulthood who suffered from this now as an adult. High-risk behaviors were also seen to be very apparent as far as for a teenager having early sexual activity, teen pregnancies, sexually transmitted diseases, and drug abuse were also very common among this group who had some type of ACE event in their early childhood and development. Here are some of the significant findings. There is a reported difference among adults reporting adverse emotional events as a child versus those reporting no ACE events at all. The people who experience adverse childhood emotional events had significant and sustained losses in health-related quality of life in adulthood relative to those people who did not experience any type of maltreatment or early childhood emotional experiences. The percentage increased dramatically with the number of ACE events that occurred during that childhood. So it also is related to the fact that if we had one, there's a chance that we're going to have some problems with that. But if we have multiples, then our chances of having health-related issues are going to greatly increase. Here's a study with under this ACE study is that they looked at hospitalizations for autoimmune disorders. And in the study, they evaluated that 64% reported at least one ACE event in their upbringing or in their childhood experiences. 64% of autoimmune issues had some type of trauma occur early in childhood. And if there were more than one ACE event, there now was a 70% risk for hospitalization if two events occurred. 80% increase for the risk of myasthenia gravis, which is an autoimmune issue, had greatly increases just with any type of disorder or emotional stress at that early childhood development. And this last number is astounding. There's a 100% increased risk for rheumatic diseases and arthritic type diseases as related to childhood emotional experiences that were traumatic. This is very significant because a lot of people suffer from this problem, and to know that there's actually a precipitating cause is very helpful in knowing how to help a client. Childhood traumatic stress increased the likelihood of hospitalization with a diagnosed autoimmune disease decades in adulthood. In other words, this can lay dormant in our life for decades, and all of a sudden now we're in our 40s and 50s and we're experiencing these health problems related to an earlier trauma that may have occurred 40 years ago. These findings are consistent with recent biological studies on the impact of early life stresses on subsequent inflammatory diseases. And so the studies have gone even further and looked further beyond rheumatic diseases and find that other inflammatory diseases also fall into the same pattern. So the question is, can adverse emotional stress be a contributing factor of many common ailments? Well, according to this study, which is the largest or one of the largest healthcare studies, that study says yes, and the statistics are pretty astounding. And the Center for Disease Control and Prevention themselves say that 85% of diseases have an emotional stress event as a contributing factor. That's pretty large. Also, other numerous studies have linked adverse emotional experiences to both memory loss, hyperactivity, high-risk behaviors, addictions, and chronic illnesses. Even negative attitudes and beliefs about oneself can lower your immune system and make you more prone to get sick. Studies have shown that negative thinking and improper beliefs can affect our immune system, as we just showed from the ACE study. The truth is, our brains were not built to handle long-term stress. We become overloaded, stuck, unable to think clearly, and our physical bodies will start to break down very quickly. Short-term stress is what we're more apt to deal with, but unfortunately in this day in society, most of the stresses we're stuffing, where we don't have the capability to work through them, and so we live with these stresses without dealing with them properly. Why would our past or present emotional events affect our lives adversely? The key here that we need to understand is that these stresses don't get lodged in the conscious brain. They get lodged in what we call the subconscious brain. That's that part of the brain that we don't think about. That's the part of the brain that's actually handling processes and functions and chemical reactions within our body without us even being consciously aware of it. Predominantly located in the limbic system of the deep brain, this subconscious brain can be found. We're going to talk about the limbic system in a few slides later, but this is very interesting as far as the subconscious beliefs as being the key. According to Bruce Lipton, who's written a book, The Biology of Belief, who is a major researcher, he's a biologist and has worked with genetics, he has basically stated that we really operate 95 to 99% of our lives from the subconscious brain. Think about it. As you're sitting watching this presentation, you're not really thinking about the food that you just probably ate before you watched this, or you're not really thinking about the temperature if it's within reason. Your body's picking up all these sensors and basically processing this information, and it's doing so that if we looked at the full output of your brain capability, only about 5 to 7% of your brain is in the conscious arena, and the rest of it's in the subconscious. And if these traumas get locked in the subconscious, how are we going to deal with them properly? It's going to be difficult, and we'll show how it's possible with QNRT. The major problem is that people are only aware of their conscious beliefs, as we just discussed. So subconscious beliefs are working either for you or against you. But the truth is that you are not controlling your life because your subconscious mind supersedes all control of the conscious brain. That's a powerful statement, and this is very powerful in how we look at QNRT in dealing with those emotional stress elements, even ones that you may not be fully aware of, so that we can change the biology of your system and so that it can operate in the way that it was intended. Other studies have shown that actually positive thinking and affirmations don't work, and the interesting thing is the reason why they don't work is that positive thoughts come from the conscious mind. We just talked about how that controls very little output of brain activity during a day, and that versus the negative thoughts, which are now programmed in the more powerful subconscious mind. This is an unbelievable concept to get, is that we literally can't think ourselves, and we can't say over and over again, I'm going to be healthy, I'm going to be healthy, and expect to change, because it is the negative subconscious beliefs that have more power and more control of your life than we really know. The new science of epigenetics has many promising aspects of what it's going to provide for healthcare and science. It will help us reach the highest possibilities, which includes healing of our bodies, our past cultural stresses, and learning to live in peace instead of strife and conflict and war. Let's go back and let's talk about the limbic system, because if we can understand a little bit about the limbic system and how our brain was designed, we're going to have a better understanding of why those early traumas will cause health problems and what we can do now as an adult to deal with this in a better manner so that we can live our fullest potential and be healthy. The limbic system really responds the same to both a painful event and also an emotional stress. It really can't tell the difference because the limbic system is for survival. It's for survival protection, not only protecting us in the physical environment, but also protecting us from the emotional environment. So any stresses that we are subjected to, our brain is going to create a new neural pathway so that it has that memory file to actually help us next time when anything is similar to that. It actually is a very unique survival mechanism, but the unfortunate aspect of it is if we can't get out of that limbic system response, then we're always subjected to those automatic responses. So let's talk about the limbic system and briefly just talk about how it's made up and how it actually works. It is made up of several organs and glands, the hypothalamus being the most prominent of this whole system. But when something is perceived to be wrong, whether it is some type of physical issue or emotional issue, then the thalamus is going to receive this message from a different part of your brain, and it's going to be asking, is something wrong with this information? If I perceive that I may be in danger, then I need to send a signal to the amygdala, which is now going to interpret that information as saying, yes, I am in danger, I need to do something now, and it's going to send a signal into the hippocampus and burn a new neural structure. This new neural structure is for the purposes of taking a quick action and also helping us to take a quicker action later. That's the aspect of that survival mechanism. It's what's called the fight or flight mechanism. Once the hypothalamus is activated, it creates a fight or flight response. And so in a modern society, that's considered confront or avoid. This response is meant to be taken quickly. So now, because a new neural structure has been formed to allow us to react quickly and automatically, and now any similar stress in the future now becomes an automatic reaction. So any physical or emotional sense that we're in danger is going to trigger this limbic system for us to react quickly, so that we may not like that pre-programmed response. We may become angry. We may shut down emotionally. We may feel unworthy as a result of what we're dealing with. And we may be in pain because this stress brings back these past memories. So the health principle that we want to teach you as it relates to the QNRT system is that we now know that our brain and nervous system will adjust its physiology and responses to fit with our congruent beliefs. This is a very powerful statement, because if we understand that our congruent beliefs may not be correct, and if it's not correct, then our brain and nervous system will adjust its physiology in a response to that belief. It reminds me of a story of several years ago where I was hiking in Montana, and I was in a kind of national park area. And so before I went on that hike, I was looking on the board, and they were giving a warning sign saying that bears have been seen on the trails, so as hikers, be careful. And so I got that in my mind that I need to be careful to look for danger. And as I went through this hiking trail, it opened out into this field that had this beautiful view of mountain ranges. And I remember looking out and saying, you know, how great and how pretty that was, when I heard a rustle behind me, which was in a bush. And that bush was shaking and making a lot of noise. And my first assumption would have been what? That there was a bear in that bush, based on the information that I read. And I was literally looking at that cliff saying, what would be my best option to take if it was a bear? Thank God it wasn't. As I waited and patiently was thinking what I would do, it ended up being two squirrels that were playing with each other, making such a noise that it almost sounded like a bear. But you could see that if my congruent belief at that moment was that it was a bear, that my physiology was changing immediately. My heart rate was going up, my pulse was going up, my sweat glands, I was starting to sweat, cold sweat on the back of my neck, and my brain was racing to look for solutions. And so my total physiology changed until the fact that I saw that it was squirrels, and then everything came back down, and I realized that I had the wrong belief, and I was ready to take action, which may not be appropriate at that time. So think of that situation, and then think that also applies even with past traumas, and those early childhood traumas can now cause a different filtering system in our brain, so that now we may react to situations in such a way that are not appropriate, and it may cause health stress problems, and we may have different stress chemicals in our system at a higher level than we ought to. So one of the other things that we know is our brain is programmed to control all the tissues in our body, and a lot of activity takes place in that brain. In fact, your brain will literally use up about 70% of all your energy in a day, and that tells us that the brain is active for most of the day and even in nighttime. But in your brain, there are different areas of that brain that relate to different stresses, and those stresses will cause certain different problems. For example, if we look at something like chronic pain, then we're also seeing that that's located in a specific area of the brain called the central motor processing strip. And the type of emotions that can set that pain pattern off can be things like resentment, anger, and some critical loss that occurred in one's life. If those things are not resolved, then we may be more prone to pain. When we look at something like the thyroid, it's now located within the frontal lobe of the brain. And the type of emotional stress that can affect your thyroid's ability to work properly are those things that are related to things that are powerless and out of balance. We come back here and look at the breast. And the breast has certain emotional stresses related to worry, constant arguments, and feeling unsafe within relationships. And these can set off certain stresses that now this tissue cannot function properly. When we look at areas of the colon, then we're dealing with indigestible anger that's stuffed within that colon. And so now we may have certain digestive issues. And there's many more that are apparent. This slide's only giving you just a few as it relates to some of the most common ailments. But knowing that these ailments do have certain emotional stresses that can trigger this dysfunction in this area of the body. So our emotional wounds can be considered to be like barbed wire in our brain. And we have learned that early childhood ACE events become entangled like wires in our brain and affects our nervous system's ability to connect to different areas of our body based on those emotional stresses. We also know that they create strong subconscious pathways that are very apparent based on what the following research or the past research that I gave. We know that it will alter the immune system and it will certainly alter the pain pathways. And so you as a client may be suffering from that based on some of the things that we talked about as some of the root causes. Also, we know that the limbic system will be affected and altered based on those stress events. And so now we have these automatic reactions that are pre-programmed in a sense, hardwired into the brain that may be very difficult to overcome. And we also know that negative thoughts and negative actions affects that deep subconscious part of the brain and also can affect our health based on studies that have been done. So QNRT, Quantum Neuro Reset Therapy, now becomes a protocol and a method to deal with this issue. The good news is Quantum Neuro Reset Therapy is not a talk therapy. We spend very little time talking about the stress or situation occurred. What we really spend our time is figuring out what part of the brain is involved and how do we resolve this issue from a neurological standpoint to allow your limbic system to not hyperreact to any stress that's similar. QNRT is a proprietary protocol that is designed to initiate a neuroadaptive shift in the body by helping the brain recover from the stress caused by adverse emotional and traumatic experiences. In other words, it is certainly going to create a change within the nervous system so that your body can heal in the way that is intended and also reduce the stress from these emotional stresses and these traumatic experiences. Looking at it another way, we can explain that QNRT is definitely a neurological therapy that resets the way the hypothalamus responds to certain sensory stimuli associated with an adverse event. In other words, it's going to go into that deep part of the brain. It's going to deal on the subconscious level of where this problem occurred. And so there's nothing wrong with talk therapy because talk therapy can help give you tools to deal with the stresses that you dealt with in life. But it may not get down to that subconscious area, which is very important to deal with. The brain associates a sensory input at the time of that adverse event. The brain takes in all that sensory information and it actually stores it in the brain to not be forgotten. It also burns it into the neural pathways as we discussed within the hippocampus. And that now becomes our storage area to be valuable information to be used later in life. This sensory stimuli can become the trigger that places a person right back into that fight or flight mode without any thought or conscious thought in doing so. And the beauty of what QNRT can do is help resolve some of that stresses so that your brain can think properly and think better than it ever did before. This is a subconscious process we do not work with the conscious brain. We work with the subconscious brain to help resolve these stresses so that your body can work properly. The person is not consciously thinking of or associating the event with a trigger that is locked in the nervous system. In other words, there's no way you can really tell yourself what's actually connected. And so by working with a qualified QNRT practitioner, they will be trained in doing so, and then they will help you bring this information forward. The QNRT system will use advanced neurological evaluations and neurological activation techniques to identify and reset those triggers that cause undue emotional and physical stress in the body. A board-certified QNRT practitioner has attended all the seminars necessary to be qualified to be certified. They've also have passed a test, and they have shown proficiency in their ability to do this system. And once that has occurred, they now have the ability to be on our website as a certified practitioner. It's important that anyone else who claims to do this type of work and has not been certified is not someone that you want to see. This person has been qualified to evaluate the brain balance through highly specific functional neurological tests. They do not have to use expensive tests. Many times things that can be done are very simple, and yet the information that will come forward will be astounding. These practitioners will be able to evaluate specific reflex points on the body to determine the how, the when, and with whom this emotional stress was established. Also, be able to determine all aspects of this emotional wound, both from the past and the present. The QNRT system uses proprietary protocols to activate the limbic system and other important neurological reflexes. It establishes new congruent beliefs without doing talk therapy. To learn more, to find a certified QNRT practitioner, go to our website. We have a lot of information on there that's helpful for you and any other family member that might be interested. There is a tab there to look for practitioners that have taken our seminars and have been certified. Also, our office is located in a very convenient place. It's right north of Atlanta, called Roswell, Georgia. We have the headquarters located there, our training center, our clinic is here, and we have many clients that are interested in coming to see us, and they do come to us from out of state. We see clients from all over the country. We also see clients internationally as well. We have great facilities where you can stay. We have plenty of places here that are fun to eat, and we also have many places you can visit which can be making it fun as well. But our office is very amendable to your needs. We find a way that we can evaluate you and take you through some type of treatment to get to these root issues so that you can get well. And then we send you home with recommendations that you can now do at home to continue the process. We really look forward to seeing you. We hope that this has been helpful in learning more about other options that you may be looking for to get to the root issue of your health issue. You can respond on the website. There's an info tab. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you, and we're looking forward to see how we can help you in the future. Again, I want to thank you for being a part of this presentation. My name is Dr. John Turner. We hope to see you soon.